focus on Delta State.
Okay. Well, the unfortunate thing is that we have very few farms surviving now. We've had some farmers dead as a result of bird flu. At least about 4, and still counting. Some are sick from the loss of their life earnings and family support, which is the farm. It's an unfortunate development, especially when you think about the fact that it could have been you think about school children who really need these eggs for their nutrition. All of us, we all need the eggs.
But the kids need it like really much.
It's essential to them, you know. And you look at income, salaries have not increased. So we are treading on the path of malnutrition soon without the egg. Although there will be argument that we have other sources of animal protein like beef and pork.
Is the beef that accessible to us?
Okay. If you look at it, if there is increase in the returns on beef, you will continue to get more of the cattle being shipped down here. And well, I think something is abnormal with the present situation. Avian influenza, COVID-19, and insecurity. This influenza thing has come to compound our problem.
I can imagine.
So, well, without passing blames, we'll ask, and the last appearance here, I told you that we are strongly encouraging vaccination of birds, and we're calling on policymakers, you know, the governments to authorize vaccination, because if you look at the OIE recommendation, vaccination, use of vaccination in relevant epidemiological situations when appropriate is allowed. It's one of the basic requirements for the control of avian influenza. What the vaccine does is that it prevents the shedding of the virus, it prevents the loss of egg production, it prevents the attachment of the highly pathogenic avian influenza. So it saves a lot, you know. To a very great extent, it prevents the disease, and it is allowed by the World Organization for Animal Health. So let's come to the pathetic story of
hold on, before we get to the pathetic story of Delta State, I asked this question last week, and the last time you were here, and I still, sitting down here, I still find myself wanting to ask the same question. What was the reason the federal government said no to vaccination in the first place? I still don't understand.
Because it was appropriate then.
Appropriate in what sense?
You see,
polio. Let's use polio.
Yes.
We don't have polio, but when a child is born, they tell you
vaccinate,
take the vaccination, because there's been experience of polio outbreak before. This is not the first time I'm hearing of bird flu. That is your Asian that be influenza.
Yes.
This is not the first time. So it has happened just like polio, and everybody is taking the vaccination, getting vaccinated, and even yellow fever. It's like the same thing. So why was there? Did the government say no to vaccination in the first place?
Good. The scientific answer is that all these examples you have given are endemic diseases. That is, they are diseases that are around us here. You know, so the risk is always there if you have a baby and then you don't vaccinate the child, because the disease organism, the causal agent of the disease is always here. That is for endemic diseases. But avian influenza before now wasn't endemic in Nigeria. You see, we were watching the migratory birds that bring this disease occasionally. So you have, sometimes for 2 years you don't have an outbreak, for 3 years you don't have an outbreak. Then suddenly you have an outbreak. But then, that's no vaccination policy was okay, because if you remember in 2006, we were here talking about please eat chicken because the government has been able to handle the outbreak, you know. You get to a farm, when there is an outbreak, we have early warning system, we have early detection system, we have rapid confirmation system. NBRI is there, which is the National Veterinary Laboratory, the Research Institute. We have that. Nigeria is fortified, equipped to be able to carry out the necessary control measures. But suddenly, there was an outbreak in January 9, somewhere in Nasarawa, in local government in Kano, which was not properly handled. So, to answer your question, our threat then, what we say, culling policy, that's what we call it. Kill, slaughter, where you have an outbreak, just stamp out the farm, decontaminate. Because the disease was coming from migratory birds. So when they pass, the risk disappears. But now the disease has come to stay because we mismanaged the stamping. So from January till now, we're still talking about avian influenza ravaging farms. The question is, why was it mismanaged with all these facilities we have? Every state has a veterinary department or a ministry of animal health. We have the veterinary council is there. We have the livestock ministry or livestock department in the Ministry of Agriculture. We have the National Veterinary Research Institute, and we have more than 7,000 in the last count veterinarians in this country, in public, administrative, research, and private practice, you know. But the farmers have suffered. One thing I will look at is the negligence on the part of government. You see, OIE, World Organization for Animal Health, one of the basic requirements for AI prevention and control is compensation mechanism, establishment of compensation mechanism and its management. If a farmer is unfortunate to have an outbreak on his farm and he knows that this farm is worth 3 million, by the time you come to kill the birds and stamp it out, he's going to get 1.5 million. Well, he will hope that he's going to start over with half his stock. You know, that is bearable, it's tolerable. But when a farmer knows that you're coming to, if he announces his outbreak, government will come stamp out the farm and then nothing is paid, of course, the farmer is tempted to recover some losses by slaughtering these birds and taking them to the markets. That is the unfortunate thing about the public health aspect of this outbreak. The unsuspecting market person buys it. The public goes to the market to buy, and we're just spreading the disease. Because we did that, this disease has now come to stay. So, like polio, like others, I understand
it's
polio
now
has been
becoming
stamped
those
out.
the name endemic.
Yes, it's now endemic.
Okay, well, I want to come in here. You said some people, some farmers,
Yes.
knowing fully well that they will not gain from this loss,
Yes.
brings the birds to the market.
Yes.
Do they bring the bird alive to the market, or they bring the bird dead to the market? Slaughtered already or still alive?
Both live and
I thought
breasts.
this
When you
bird
have
flu
an outbreak,
brings them down like.
yes, but when you know that when you lose 500 birds today, you call the Malan to come and pack the remaining tomorrow. And then they get to the market as live birds. So they get to the market both as live and as dressed birds. So those dead ones, you still want to slaughter them and dress them and send them to the freezer for sale because you need to recoup something. Your family must continue to survive.
No, I want to know so that we will know how best to go about buying birds from the farm, from the market now. How long can those birds that have actually been close to the ones affected with bird flu last in the market standing on their feet?
How long? Okay, matter of days.
So
Matter of
if
days.
they're even infected, they could still be standing today, tomorrow, and
Yes,
next tomorrow,
yes,
and
matter
we
of
could
days.
still buy them like that,
Yes,
thinking
yes,
everything is
yes,
okay.
Yes, yes.
Mm,
And
that's
then
something.
when you go to market like Ogbuangwe market here, where there is really heavy sales of live birds, you know, they process it there. You know, when it becomes cheaper, of course, you get a lot of these farm carriers coming down there, and people buy. You know, unsuspecting members of the public buy.
And some people are celebrating that birds are now cheap, so it's good to buy them now cheap.
Well, they are cheap because they are dying.
They are dying. So
When
that's where
after that, they become costlier, and that is where the malnutrition will come in. You know, they become costlier.
that's where I'm going to come to now. We have gone to the market to buy the cheap bird that are already sick. Does this sick bird have any effect on us as humans?
Yes, the disease, though, is mainly a disease of birds, but sometimes it has crossed the species barrier to infect man and animals. We found it in cats, in rats, in dogs, and pigs, you know. But the main host of avian influenza, type A influenza, is the bird, the commercial, the domesticated bird, and the wild birds. You know, unfortunately, it doesn't cause any disease in the wild birds, so they don't really die where they are. They come out, they're carrying it, and they're spreading it. So the problem is, it is transmitted to man by contact. You know, by close contact. So either close contact with the bird or with the secretions of the birds, because in its feces you find the virus, in the body secretions, in the mucus you find the virus. So your contact with the birds, the people who are at highest risk are people who work directly with birds. Then those who also work with the birds' manure, you know, they are at risk, though minimal risk, because the environment will also affect it, and fermentation processes, microbial activities will also affect it. But the feces of a contaminated farm is carrying the virus. So if you go to market to buy a bird that is from an outbreak on a farm, you're having contact with the virus. That is one. But having that virus is a very serious problem, but that will only kill the individual, because we've not had man-to-man transmission of avian influenza. What we have had is a break off of the species barrier. So you can have Mr. A get contaminated, get infected from contact, either by buying the dead chicken or the live contaminated chicken, getting the virus and coming down with avian flu, with the kind of typical flu signs like cough, sore throats, fever, malaise, you know, and then is treated, and it's not responding. Advanced laboratory investigation shows it's avian influenza, and the man dies because we have 50% mortality, proven mortality rates in all humans who are infected with avian influenza. So
I want to stop you there and ask one very important question.
yes.
A lot of people, which is really pressing to us, and a lot of people out there believe that when you cook, you boil,
Yes.
you roast
Yes.
the chicken, that everything bird flu leaves it, and then it is good for consumption. You are safe, you are okay, just keep eating.
Yes.
How true is
If
that?
you give me a cooked chicken, bird flu chicken here now, I will eat it because eating it, I'm not at risk. But the person who prepared it is in contact with the virus. The person is at risk.
So are you trying to
it's
tell me that
destroyed, the
if
virus is
if the
destroyed?
bird is boiled or roasted
Yes.
or fried,
Yes.
the virus goes home?
Heat cooked, it kills the virus. So the person who is eating, if your plate is not contaminated, you are not going to get the virus from eating it.
Okay.
That is scientific. However, how does it get to your plate? How does it get to the pot, without this contamination of the person who is going to prepare it? So the provision for control is that you don't put avian influenza birds into the food chain. It should not be in the food chain at all. And it is the responsibility of the regulators to see that these things don't come into our food chain. And one important aspect is that compensation. Because the man will send it into the food chain, except he has a hope of surviving.
Exactly, you're correct.
Except he has a hope of surviving.
And with that, they just said the hope of survival. In Delta State, we saw some farms that are already empty.
Yes.
As in completely empty.
And the
Is
farmers
there
have
anything?
died. Farmers have died.
So I heard farmers died from shock.
Imagine that you are owning a bank. You've put in your retirement benefits into an investment, you've taken loan, and everything vaporizes in 1 week. And this thing is running into hundreds of millions of naira. Tell me how the man is going to, of course, he would die of some kind of shock. So we've lost farmers, and I think I'm not a fan of calling government to come and solve any problem, but this is a social problem now. It's not just a farmer's problem, it's a social problem, and it's going to worsen,
Has there been any talk of checking up on this farm or compensation from any angle at all? Because I remember when bird flu did come as at was it not 2006 you were talking about?
Yes.
I remember that in the north, the ground was dug up and birds were being thrown in by the government. Government agencies were doing that, and they were promised real compensation.
Exactly.
Hopefully they got those compensation, because if they did not, we would have heard of that story bypass.
Exactly.
But right now, what is the situation?
It was properly managed then, and that is why it did not become endemic. But it's like now you had some at that early time between January and April, there were some people who were above the law around the areas where they got the first outbreak. So maybe the government agencies could not control them, or they were just like daisical about it and they did not do anything.
You're talking about compensation. Does that compensation that happened in 2006 still works now?
Well, 2006, there was hope then, because sometimes you hear some farmers were compensated.
Yes.
But this time, I never had. You see, I was saying two reasons why Kanu outbreak was not properly managed. We never heard that anybody was compensated, So it is either the people were not compensated, the government did not try to control, or some people were just above the law. You can say this area is quarantined, And then one farm is owned by one general, and he says, my friend, take my birds to the market. Because this is the type of government we're having now, the enforcement of such regulations can be really difficult. So we are looking at those two areas, either because there is no hope, there is no plan, and farmers were in that area where you first had the outbreak, assuming it was stamped out there.
Yeah.
We won't have this problem now.
Let's not cry over spilled milk by now.
Yes,
but
yes.
The way forward, I'm thinking of the way forward.
The way forward is vaccination, and then government intervention into poultry farming. These farmers that have lost their source of livelihood, you will say, well, it's private business, that's their business, but then it's a social problem because
cattle rearing is also private business.
Yeah, okay, and government is investing in it.
Government is so
Okay.
into it.
So I think it's good, it's morally okay, and to look at the sufferings of these farmers, especially now that the feedstuffs are not there. Maize is so expensive. A bag of feed is now 5,800 to 6,000 naira, and the farmers who farm the maize and cereals in the north are not farming because of
everything is
insecurity.
going everywhere in Nigeria. Let's not go there because it's becoming like we're going to be talking about a whole lot of things and we'll be sorry for ourselves in no time. That's just the truth.
There are certain things you cannot say in public.
Yes.
Certain things are not allowed on this platform.
But we'll be giving the signal. I would like to say thank you so much, Dr. Chukwudi Ekukoma.
Thank you, man.
Is the MD Kindness Veterinary Consult. Thank you so much for your time. And the Morning Watch will continue on the dial. Please don't go nowhere. We're still here.